Imagine winning a landmark legal battle that, fundamentally rewrites women's rights in the ancient world.
Right, total victory.
Yeah, but then you realize your prize is a piece of property that's currently occupied by an army with indestructible iron weapons.
That is quite the plot twist.
It really is. Today, we are looking at a 3,000-year-old property ledger that contains exactly that story. But before we jump into this wild sequence of events, I want to warmly welcome you, the listener, and offer a divine blessing for your day and the week ahead. May you find insight, strength, and peace in whatever you're navigating right now. We are just so thrilled you've chosen to spend this time with us.
Absolutely. We are jumping into a really specific deep dive today, focusing on an ancient text, Joshua chapter 17.
Right.
And to get underneath the surface of this text, we're pulling insights and archaeological commentary from both the Holman Bible and NWA, or New American Standard Update, study Bibles.
Which is great because on a quick read, this chapter just looks like a dry, bureaucratic list of land allotments for the half-tribe of Manasseh in ancient Israel.
Oh, totally. It sounds like the kind of thing you just skip right over if you were casually reading historical documents.
Yeah, exactly. Just a bunch of borders and city names.
Right. However, when you actually dig into the historical context, this list of borders reveals a massive disruption of ancient social norms.
Which is fascinating all on its own.
It is. And it also shows the terrifying reality of Bronze Age military technology and gives us this really incredible look at how sheer survival forced human beings to invent entirely new ways of farming.
The causal chain here is just mind-blowing to me. By the time we finish unpacking this, you are going to see how the fear of a very specific type of ancient military vehicle directly caused a revolution in agricultural engineering.
It really did.
But to understand the battlefields and the farming, we actually have to start in a courtroom, or, the ancient equivalent of one, because before we talk about who physically occupied this land, we have to look at who held the legal deed.
So the legal drama here centers on the family of a man named Zelophehad. He was from the tribe of Manasseh, specifically from the lineage of Machir. Now, Zelophehad passed away, but he didn't leave behind any sons. He left 5 daughters: Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah.
Right, and we have to pause and look at the economic reality of the ancient Near East for a second to really understand why this is a crisis.
Oh, it's a huge crisis.
Yeah, because in this patriarchal culture, land wasn't just where you built your house. It was the entire GDP of your clan. It was your survival, your identity, and your legacy. And that land inheritance flowed exclusively through the male line.
Right, women typically received a dowry.
Which was like liquid, movable wealth meant to secure them in their new husband's household. But they didn't receive the actual dirt. The territory itself was kept strictly among the men to ensure the clan's borders never shrank.
So the absence of male heirs meant that Zelophehad's name, his entire lineage, and his family's portion of the Promised Land were basically on the brink of being completely erased from history.
Wow.
Yeah, in that culture, losing your land meant your family effectively ceased to exist.
But these 5 women refuse to accept that erasure. They basically initiate what is an ancient Supreme Court test case.
They really do.
The text describes Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah walking right up to Eleazar the priest, to Joshua the paramount leader, and all the tribal chieftains.
This is a bold move.
Unbelievably bold. Picture the intimidation factor here. You have a massive assembly of hardened warlords and religious leaders, and these 5 sisters just step forward to demand a rewrite of standard operating procedure.
And their approach is brilliant because they don't just appeal to emotion. They use razor-sharp legal precedent.
They did their homework.
They absolutely did. They cite a prior ruling from Moses himself. They remind this assembly that God commanded they receive an inheritance among their male relatives.
Right.
Moses had previously established a special stipulation declaring that the absence of sons permitted daughters to inherit, specifically to keep a father's name alive. So they are holding Joshua and the leadership accountable to their own constitutional law.
It's just an incredibly progressive moment for the ancient world. I mean, you just don't expect to read about a group of sisters successfully petitioning the highest military and religious authorities to fundamentally alter property law.
No, it's highly unusual.
But as someone who loves history, I always want to know if this actually happened outside the pages of the text. Like, do we have any proof that this legal ruling translated to reality on the ground? Did these specific women actually get to own and manage this land?
Well, the archaeological record actually provides a stunning answer to that.
Wait, really?
Yes. The Holman Study Bible Commentary points to a discovery made in the ruins of the ancient capital city of Samaria. Archaeologists excavating the site found a large collection of ostraca dating back to the 8th century BC.
Okay, ostraca are the pieces of broken pottery that people used as ancient scratch pad paper, right? Because papyrus was too expensive for everyday use.
That is correct. So these specific ostraca were being used as commercial receipts for shipments of agricultural goods, primarily wine and olive oil. And written right there on these 8th century BC tax and shipping receipts are the names of Zelophehad's daughters.
No way.
Yeah. You find receipts referencing entire districts named Noah and Hogla. The receipts also mention other Manasseh clans listed in Joshua 17, like Shechem and Abiezer.
Oh, wow. Let the timeline of that sink in for a second. Hundreds of years after this initial legal ruling with Joshua, bureaucratic officials in a bustling capital city are still writing out business receipts using the names of these 5 women to designate major agricultural districts.
It is amazing. The Supreme Court ruling stuck.
They didn't just get the land on paper. Their names became permanently etched into the geography of the nation.
It is a remarkable testament to the endurance of that legal victory. However, there was a mechanism put in place to ensure this new precedent didn't destroy the broader tribal system.
Ah, okay, what was the catch?
The study notes highlight a very specific legal nuance. The daughters were granted the land, but they were required to marry within their own tribe of Manasseh.
Ah, which solves the geopolitical problem. Because if Hogla, for example, married a chieftain from the neighboring tribe of Judah, the ancient laws of marriage would mean her land would technically pass to Judah's territory.
Exactly. Manasseh's borders would slowly be carved up and absorbed by other tribes just through marriage.
So the stipulation was a compromise.
Right. It ensured the land didn't bleed from one tribe to another, maintaining the integrity of the national map, while still fundamentally protecting the economic and territorial rights of these women.
That makes total sense. So they win the legal battle. The ostraca prove they held the territory. But having a piece of paper, or, well, a piece of pottery saying you own a territory is very different from actually taking physical possession of it.
Oh, completely different.
Especially when the squatters currently living on your new property possess the ancient equivalent of weapons of mass destruction.
Right. The geographical and military nightmare the tribe of Manasseh walks into is just daunting. Their allotted territory includes some of the most strategically vital real estate in the ancient world. They are given major towns located within the broader borders of Issachar and Asher places, like Megiddo, Bethshean, Dor, and Tanakh.
We really have to emphasize how important Megiddo is. This isn't just a quiet farming village.
Not at all.
Megiddo sits right on the Via Maris, which is the major international trade route connecting the Empire of Egypt to the empires of Mesopotamia. Whoever controls Megiddo can basically tax the global economy.
And the Canaanites living there were not about to hand over the keys to the global economy to a group of newly arrived Israelites.
Right.
So the biblical text in Joshua 17 delivers a sobering update. It bluntly states that the children of Manasseh could not drive out the inhabitants of those cities.
And I have to admit, I had some confusion when reading this part of the text.
Oh, why is that?
Well, the chapter specifically highlights that they are descendants of Machir. And Machir is explicitly described in the very first verse as a man of war.
Right.
This is a tribe with a fierce martial reputation. Why does a famously warlike clan suddenly freeze up and fail to take the cities they just inherited?
Well, the failure wasn't a lack of courage. It was a massive disparity in military physics.
Okay, military physics.
Yeah, the Canaanites in those Pacific lowland valley cities deployed a technology that the Israelites simply could not counter with standard Bronze Age infantry tactics.
The iron chariot.
The iron chariots. The text specifically calls out their iron chariots, and the NWA study notes provide crucial context on why these were so devastating.
Because we shouldn't picture the light, nimble wooden chariots you might see in a movie about Egyptian archers, right?
Exactly. Egyptian chariots were like ancient sports cars. They were lightweight, often with 4-spoke wheels, designed to shoot arrows and speed away.
But the Canaanite ones were different.
Very different. The Canaanite chariots were heavy shock cavalry.
They are essentially ancient armored tanks.
That comparison works perfectly when you look at the mechanics. These vehicles were heavily armored, reinforced with iron fittings on the chassis, but the true technological leap was the wheels.
The wheels.
Yes, the notes point out that these chariots featured 8-spoke wheels.
Wait, why does the number of spokes matter so much in battle?
It's all about weight distribution and durability.
Yeah.
If you put heavy iron armor on a standard 4-spoke wooden wheel and drive it into combat, The wheel will shatter the moment it hits a rock or, the bone of an enemy soldier.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the eight-spoke design distributed the immense weight of the iron, allowing the chariot to absorb massive impacts without breaking apart.
So if you were an Israelite foot soldier armed with a bronze sword or a wooden spear, and a wall of these heavy iron-reinforced machines charges at you, sure, bravery isn't going to save you.
No, it would be a massacre.
Your weapons would literally bounce off or snap against the iron. But this heavy armor also dictates the tactical map, doesn't it? Because iron is really heavy.
It dictates everything. These iron chariots were practically invincible against infantry, but they had a fatal geographical flaw.
Which was?
They required flat, open, dry terrain to operate. If you try to drive a heavy iron chariot up a steep rocky hill or through a muddy swamp, it bogs down instantly. They were custom built for the flat plains, specifically the massive Jezreel Valley where Megiddo and Bethshean are located.
So the Canaanites keep the valleys because they have the technological superiority there, and the Israelites refuse to march down into the plains just to get run over.
Exactly.
It creates a complete topographical bottleneck. The Israelites are squeezed out of the best, most fertile land and pushed up into the central hill country.
And the demographic pressure builds rapidly. The people of Joseph, which includes the massive tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, find themselves confined to the steep, densely forested mountains.
That's a huge problem.
It is. Their population is growing, but they have no usable land to feed their people. This socioeconomic crisis leads to a very tense confrontation with Joshua.
Right, they bring a formal grievance. The tribes approach Joshua and basically say, "We are a numerous, blessed people. Why did you only give us one lot, one single portion of land to inherit? The hill country is too small for us, and we can't expand into the valleys because the Canaanites in Bethshean have iron chariots."
It's a very real logistical nightmare. But Joshua's response is fascinating. He actually leverages their own argument against them.
He tells them, "If you are such a great and numerous people, go up into the forests and the mountains and clear it yourselves."
Yes.
And when I first read that, it felt like terrible leadership. I mean, it feels dismissive. Isn't Joshua just passing the buck? Instead of sitting down with his generals to figure out a tactical plan to neutralize the chariots, he essentially hands his people a bunch of axes and tells them to go do grueling manual labor in the woods.
It sounds abrasive for sure. But the NAA study notes reveal that Joshua is actually exercising brilliant visionary leadership.
Really? How so?
Well, the Israelites were historically semi-nomadic pastoralists. They knew how to raise sheep and live in tents. But Joshua realizes they cannot survive in Canaan as nomads anymore.
Okay.
This exact push into the uninhabitable, forested highlands forced the Israelites to invent and adopt groundbreaking agricultural technologies.
Necessity becomes the mother of invention. Because if you try to plant a normal wheat field on a steep 30-degree mountain slope, the first winter rain is just going to wash all your topsoil and your seeds right down into the valley.
Exactly. So to support a dense human population in these wild, uncultivated areas, they developed agricultural terracing.
Which is huge.
It wasn't just planting seeds, it was monumental earth moving. They carved step-like fields into the sides of the mountains. They had to quarry stone, build massive retaining walls along the contours of the hills, and then manually backfill those walls with dirt to create flat, arable stairs up the mountainside.
The caloric output and sheer willpower required to build a terrace system by hand is staggering. It means you are committing to this land permanently.
You have to.
But terracing only solves the dirt problem, doesn't it? Valleys have rivers and easy access to the water table. Mountains do not. How did they survive the dry season?
That leads to the second major technological leap detailed in the archaeological notes, which is plastered cisterns.
Plastered cisterns.
Yeah, the mountains of central Canaan are largely porous limestone. If you just dig a hole to catch rainwater, the water just seeps into the rock and disappears.
Right.
So the Israelites developed a specialized waterproof plaster. It was likely a mixture of slaked lime, ash, and sand.
Oh, wow.
They would carve deep pits into the bedrock and meticulously coat the inside with this plaster, creating these massive underground reservoirs that could capture and hold winter rainfall to sustain them through the scorching summer months.
And didn't they also build sophisticated stone-lined silers to protect their grain harvests from moisture and rodents?
They did, yes.
When you put all this together, it is a staggering realization. The fear of the Canaanite iron chariots down in the valley is the direct catalyst for a massive leap forward in highland engineering.
That's exactly it.
If the valleys had been easy to conquer, the Israelites never would have bothered to figure out complex terracing or plastered cisterns. They would have just taken the easy farmland and remained a simpler society.
Joshua recognizes that their true strength isn't just in their numbers. It has to be forged in their resilience.
Yeah.
He forces them into an environment where they have no choice but to build a complex civilization from the ground up.
But Joshua doesn't let them off the hook regarding those chariots, does he? He tells them to clear the forest, but he refuses to let the iron chariots remain a permanent excuse.
Right, and this is where we see the spiritual core of Joshua's leadership.
Yeah.
He tells the house of Joseph, "You are a numerous people and have great power. The mountain region shall be yours. Even though it is a forest, you shall clear it."
Okay.
But his final instruction is the most critical part. He says, "For you shall drive out the Canaanites, though they have iron chariots and are strong."
He demands they look at the situation through what the study notes call the eyes of faith.
Yes, from a purely human, tactical perspective, Bronze Age infantry cannot beat armored chariots in a flat valley. The fear of the tribes was entirely rational, based on the physics of the battlefield.
Completely rational.
But Joshua is insisting that their mandate supersedes rational military calculus. He is assuring them that if they do the grueling foundational work of establishing themselves in the mountains, they will eventually have the strength, the infrastructure, and the divine backing to overcome even the most intimidating military technology of their era.
Let's pull all these threads together because the narrative arc of this chapter is just incredible. We started by looking at 5 sisters, Mala, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirzah, who had the audacity to challenge the patriarchal norms of their day.
A huge risk.
Huge! And they secured a legal precedent so rock solid that their names were still being used on commercial receipts in the capital city hundreds of years later.
A permanent alteration of the legal and geographical landscape.
Then we shifted to the harsh reality of trying to claim that landscape. The tribe of Manasseh hits a literal iron wall. The heavy, 8-spoked iron chariots of the Canaanites dominate the fertile valleys, acting like ancient armored tanks and creating an insurmountable tactical bottleneck.
Which squeezes the Israelites into the central hill country, leading to their demographic crisis and their frustrated complaint to their leader.
And finally, we see Joshua's masterful psychological pivot. Instead of allowing his people to wallow in fear or wait for an easy victory, he points to the rugged, untouched mountains.
He forces them to innovate.
Yes, he forces them into an environment where human ingenuity has to bloom, where they are forced to carve agricultural terraces, invent waterproof cisterns, and build stone silos just to survive. The terror in the valley literally builds the civilization on the mountain.
It is a profound historical pivot point. But the historical record also shows us that this story doesn't end with a perfect, idealized triumph.
Oh.
Yeah, and that leads to a rather provocative thought I want to leave you with, based on the text.
Okay, what happened when the Israelites finally grew strong enough to face the chariots?
Well, the text notes that later in their history, when the Israelites finally gained the upper hand, became strong enough to deal with the Canaanites in those valleys, they did not follow their original foundational mandate to drive them out entirely.
Wait, really? What did they do instead?
They chose economic exploitation. They subjected the Canaanites to forced labor.
Oh, wow.
Think about the temptation here. Rather than fighting a bitter war of attrition to remove them, they looked at the Canaanites and saw a free workforce.
Right.
They could tax them, make them work the fields, and boost their own economy. They took the easy, profitable route rather than the hard obedience they were initially called to.
They traded their core mandate for a boost in GDP.
Exactly. And it leaves you to wonder, how often do societies, institutions, or even individuals compromise their most foundational principles for the sake of temporary economic convenience?
That is a great point.
When you decide that exploiting others for forced labor is a better, more practical solution than sticking to your original moral or cultural mandate, what are the long-term corrosive costs of that compromise?
That is an incredibly heavy and relevant question for you to mull over. It shows us that history isn't just a straight line of progress, you know. It's a series of complex decisions driven by fear, economics, and survival.
Very true.
Sometimes humans innovate brilliantly, like engineering a mountain terrace out of sheer necessity. And sometimes we compromise our very foundations because it's just the easier, more profitable path in the moment.
It's the messy, complicated reality of human civilization, all captured right there in what initially looked like a simple property ledger.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, from ancient courtrooms and archaeological digs to the physics of iron wheels and mountain farming. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you some new perspectives on how history actually unfolds. As we sign off, I want to warmly remind you that God blesses all the listeners. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful week.